Tavarish bought a fire-gutted Porsche 918 Spyder for $145,000, only to find out the single part needed to save it cost more than the car itself. That is the kind of high-stakes gamble that defines his channel, but then the screen went dark. For 7 months, one of the most ambitious creators on YouTube simply disappeared. He left behind a shop full of melted carbon fiber and a community wondering if he finally hit a wall that was too high to climb. This kind of silence feels different when the stakes are this high. Usually when a creator stops uploading, the audience just finds something else to watch. With Tavarish, the absence became the entire conversation. People were waiting for proof that the man who spent a fortune on a toasted hypercar hadn't actually ruined himself. Then he finally reappeared, and he didn't just come back with a life update. He dropped 2 different $1 million hypercar projects.
How's it going, guys? My name is Tavarish, and this is my McLaren P1 that I've been rebuilding after it was destroyed in a hurricane.
A cross-country charity mission and a partnership with a legendary designer all at once. This return was a total explosion of work that had been building up in the dark for half a year. It showed that the time away wasn't a retreat, but a massive accumulation of progress. To understand why this comeback felt so huge, you have to look at the foundation of the channel itself. Tavarish built his channel on a very specific kind of ambition that most people in the automotive YouTube space are not willing to operate at. While other creators were doing respectable, sensible things like buying flood cars and flipping them, or picking up lightly damaged exotics and doing clean, straightforward rebuilds, Tavarish kept finding the cars that everyone else looked at and walked away from. The McLaren P1 that went through a hurricane, the Porsche 918 Spyder that sat in a Canadian garage for over a decade after a fuel fire destroyed half of it, a car that Porsche themselves said was beyond saving. The pattern is not random. The channel's entire identity is built around the premise that impossible is a description of difficulty, not a verdict on whether something should be attempted. So when 7 months passed without an upload, the community that had been watching these projects develop was not just waiting for content. They were waiting to find out whether the man who bought a fire-damaged 918 for $145,000 had figured out what to do with a $155,000 rear carbon subframe that he freely admitted he could not afford. And then he came back. To understand what we came back to, the project needs a full breakdown.
Freddie dug a Land Rover out of the ground and rebuilt it. He turned a Pimp My Ride van into content. And one fire-damaged Gallardo didn't just change his life, it built his entire channel.
The numbers alone make it unlike almost anything else happening in the automotive space right now. This is a 2015 Porsche 918 Spyder. It has a hybrid powertrain and a full carbon fiber chassis, making it one of the most mechanically complex road cars ever put into production. This specific car caught fire in Canada and then sat completely untouched for over a decade. When it burned, the odometer read 1,678 miles. It stayed in that charred state for 10 years before it finally landed in the shop. A clean example sells for north of $2 million, but this one arrived compromised at the structural level. To fix it correctly, the team needs a rear carbon subframe sourced directly from Porsche. The price on that single component is $155,000.
This thing that I'm hitting right here, that is the subframe that I can't use, and that's the subframe that I need for this build to finish it, and that subframe from Porsche cost $155,000.
He admitted on camera that he does not have that money. Right now, the plan is to sell merchandise and try to fund the part that way.
I don't actually have $155,000. I'm selling stuff. So I am selling this parody Porsche t-shirt. It's Porsche.
That is where the project sits. That is the wall it is currently standing in front of. But the financial reality is almost secondary to what the disassembly has been turning up. This car is revealing itself in ways nobody predicted. It is simultaneously more damaged and more survivable than anyone who looked at it from the outside would have guessed. For starters, the front of the tub is cleaner than it had any right to be. Sections below the fire line are holding up. Wiring that should have been written off is actually responding to cleaning. Joey, the carbon fiber specialist brought in to assess the tub, even said he expected it to be significantly worse.
What do you think about my new project here?
I really thought it was worse.
In a project operating at this level, that sentence carries real weight. Porsche said this car was gone. Their official position was that restoration was not possible. And yet, the brake rotors are cleaning up and interior components are salvageable. The team is even finding parts that share manufacturer numbers with lower Porsche models. This means certain pieces can be sourced on eBay for a fraction of what a dealer would charge. What the 918 build is becoming, piece by piece, is a live argument. Every panel that comes off either confirms the damage or quietly walks it back. The factory drew a line and called this car dead. This rebuild is the process of testing whether that line was ever accurate to begin with. While the 918 is a story of recovery, the P1 build sits in a completely different category of achievement. What Steve and Kenny set out to do with Tavarish was not a standard rebuild. It was effectively a full-scale construction project. They started with a brand new bare carbon fiber tub from McLaren and began the nearly impossible task of building a P1 around it. Over 3 years, they sourced rare and discontinued parts from Tavarish's flood-damaged P1, a donor MP412C, prototype components, and suppliers across the world. The goal was ambitious: assemble a near factory-spec McLaren P1 inside a private garage. As the project progressed, the team ran into a major problem. Some parts were no longer available anywhere, even through McLaren.
This part, which is necessary for every McLaren P1 battery to function correctly, is discontinued, with no stock available anywhere in the world.
That forced them to fabricate custom components using CNC machining and carbon fiber-infused 3D printed parts just to keep the build moving.
We just finished up our CNC machine. Actually, this was our first little milled bit.
The battery stage nearly stopped the entire project. A replacement P1 high-voltage battery reportedly cost around $200,000, and integrating the hybrid system became one of the hardest parts of the build. The team spent days troubleshooting faults, wiring issues, and software problems while surviving on all-nighters trying to bring the car to life. When the electronics finally powered up and the car cranked for the first time, it felt historic.
The brake lights turned on.
Oh, it's on!
A privately assembled from parts McLaren P1 coming to life outside the factory is something almost nobody thought was possible. Tavarish described it as one of the biggest wins of his career, and it feels fully deserved. Then came SEMA. The team brought the still incomplete car to the biggest automotive trade show in the world before it had even properly driven under its own power. It was chaotic, ambitious, and completely fitting for a project this extreme. After the show, development continued back at their Denver facility. The project proved something few people thought could actually be done. A near factory-spec McLaren P1 could be assembled in a private American garage using sourced, adapted, and custom fabricated parts. Right in the middle of all that, while the 918 was sitting on a subframe that cost more than a house, and the P1 was making history in a private garage, there was the Australian Ute. Tavarish had been sitting on this right-hand drive truck for a year. He finally decided to bring it to life.
This wrecked one from Australia. Then I fixed it and drove it home with the ultimate goal of restoring it.
He swapped the blown V8 for a 440 horsepower LS 3-crate motor, tuned it, and drove it from Orlando to Indianapolis in the peak of summer. He even got pulled over in Tennessee by an officer who was confused by the steering wheel being on the right side. He did not do it for a profit.
Oh, man.
Yeah, sorry about that. I figured, yeah. Yeah. Sounds good. I appreciate it.
He raffled the truck off in a backyard charity event to help a young man with a rare condition called Coffin-Lowry Syndrome. This part of the story matters. It shows the heart of the channel. While the hypercars get the headlines, this was a project done the right way. It got a custom Australian interior and a professional dyno tune. Then it was handed over to a winner who was visibly shaking when his number was called.
Buddy, you're shaking. Look at this mother shake.
That moment is completely worth watching. It sits alongside the $1 million builds as proof that the channel is operating on a different level right now. The hypercars bring the audience in, and projects like the Ute give them a reason to care. But here's the real conversation surrounding the channel now. What comes next? Most people point toward the P1 Evo project, and the reason it matters so much is not just the car itself. It is the person attached to it. Frank Stephenson, the original designer of the McLaren P1, agreed to help create a completely new evolution of Tavarish's flood-damaged P1. Not a factory restoration, not a replica, a new interpretation of the car by the man who designed the original. That changes everything. This is no longer just a rebuild channel fixing damaged hypercars. It is now a creator collaborating directly with one of the most influential automotive designers of the modern era on a project the community is already treating like a major event before it has even officially started. At the same time, the audience is divided on what should happen next. Some people think the 918 should be finished first, especially with the unresolved $155,000 carbon subframe still standing in the way of the restoration. Others think the P1 Evo should become the main focus because opportunities like the Frank Stephenson collaboration almost never happen twice. And then there are viewers who want more of the smaller human projects, more builds like the Australian Ute that remind people the channel is still about passion first and spectacle second. What makes Tavarish's channel interesting right now is that all three directions feel possible at the same time. And honestly, that is probably why the 7-month silence ended up feeling so significant. The channel disappeared while multiple massive projects were all progressing behind the scenes. The 918 was entering its hardest stage. The P1 assembly build was happening through non-stop trips and late-night troubleshooting sessions. The P1 Evo project was quietly developing in the background. And the Ute charity build was turning into something that genuinely changed somebody's life. So when the uploads finally returned, it did not feel like a creator trying to recover momentum. It felt like someone opening the doors after a half a year of non-stop work. And for the people who stayed patient through the silence, the payoff was massive. And somewhere in the middle of all those million-dollar hypercars, there was still room for a right-hand drive Australian Ute raffle in somebody's backyard that reminded everyone why people connected with this channel in the first place. That is not just a comeback, that is a statement about what the channel has become. Tuna no Crust, signing off.